Sure, kids. Hola. Guten Tag. Salve. Shalom. Hey. Sinjo. Did you understand any of those words? Although they all sounded different, they were actually all the same word, hello, in different languages. Did you know there are about 6,500 languages? That's a lot. But in the beginning, there was only one language. This changed after the Bible story that we learned about last week. You remember, right? God made a covenant or promise with Noah, never to flood the whole earth again. But as part of God's covenant, there was something he wanted for the people to do. Let's find out what that was as we learn our Bible story from Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 9. After the flood and God's covenant with Noah, God said he wanted for families to grow bigger and fill the earth again. But at the time, all the people in the world spoke just one language. And instead of spreading out like God told them, they decided to stay together in one place. Noah's family traveled to a large valley where everyone could have space to have their own families and houses, but still live near each other. Their families started to grow. Noah's grandchildren had grandchildren, and those grandchildren had grandchildren. Next thing you know, it was like one giant city in the middle of an empty earth. There were so many people that they began to build their city upwards. They were building a tower so high, they thought it might be able to reach heaven. They turned mud into bricks and built their tower so high, it was up into the sky. Does this sound like the plan God had for them? Not at all. God's plan was that the people would spread out around the whole earth, remember? God saw the city and the tower that the people were building, and he knew exactly what he needed to do to stop it. God said, "Let's go down there and mix up all their language. If they can't understand each other, then they won't be able to build the city anymore." So that's exactly what he did. Suddenly, when the workers tried to talk to each other, it all sounded like gibberish. One worker would yell to another worker, "Ashkahalio!" And the other worker would look at them all confused and say, "Potato salad?" Nothing made sense anymore. Every time someone talked, it just sounded like babbling. That's why the city and its tower became known as Babel. As usual, God's plan worked perfectly. Because they couldn't understand each other, they couldn't work together. And because they couldn't work together, they couldn't build the city. Eventually, the people began to scatter over the whole earth, just like God had planned all along. Today's story had two different plans: God's plan and people's plan. God's plan was for everyone to spread out so that they could fill the earth. But the people's plan was to build a giant city with a huge tower so they could all stay together. Now, everyone sticking together may sound like a good plan, but God knows everything, and his plan is always better. It was God's plan versus the people's plan. The people's plan couldn't stand a chance against God's plan. God's plan always wins in the end, whether it's in this Bible story or in each of our lives. Proverbs 19:21 says, "There are many plans in a man's heart. Nevertheless, the Lord's counsel, that will stand." Proverbs 19:21. We all have plans and ideas for our future, but only God's plans will win in the end. Do you think the people in today's story were disappointed that their plan didn't work out? I think they were. They wanted to stick together, but that wasn't God's plan. Although they didn't understand it at the time, God's plan for them was better. Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever had to move to a new place where you really didn't want to go? Maybe you were told you couldn't join a team you really wanted to be on. Sometimes we make plans in our heart about what we want to do, only to find out that God has a different plan. Although it can be disappointing at first, we have to remember that God's plans are always the best plans. God's plans are unstoppable, and you can trust that they are good for your life. So, the best thing you can do is surrender your plans to God. He knows everything, and He loves you. He has a perfect plan for your life. So today, you can make the decision to tell God your way is better.